Alright guys, today I'm trying to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be making a video for y'all. Hopefully y'all will actually watch this. So, we posted this video on YouTube. We're going to be going over some of the stuff that we're going to be doing this week. And then on Tuesday, when we have our meeting, it'll be kind of more of like a tutorial. I'll go over a couple problems if need be, but hopefully just be there to answer any questions to help y'all out. So first things first, we're going to be going over trend lines. All we're doing for this first part, guys, for the first assignment I gave y'all, is pick the line that best fits. So if we look at our points, our data line, we're going to try to pick the line that we think would be the best fit line for the data given. So all the points are in blue. Okay, A and B actually are both correct answers, would be both lines that would fit. The thing about it is we can't say B is definitively an answer or A is definitively an answer because they both follow the scatterplot trend. Well, if we can't definitively pick A or B, then none of the lines would fit the data. Okay, we just want one line that fits the data correctly. So if we go to the next one, we have A, B, and C. Okay. Well, if we look at our points, the only line that closely matches where the lines are would be line A. B and C are both way off. They're not even in the negative trend. A actually has a negative association because from left to right it's going down, whereas B and C would have a positive association because from left to right they're going up. So A in this case would be the correct answer. Okay. Same thing here, guys. If we look at the points, we notice that they're kind of widely spread out. We can't really say that there's a definitive association with them. They're not positive nor are they negative. There's really no association. And so we can't really see if A, B, or C would be a best fit line for the data given to us. So again, an answer would be none. So hopefully we can see that how a line would specifically fit the trend given to us. Then we move on to the next part. So the second exercise I'm going to give y'all is finding the slope. Okay. So what we have to do is we look at the data given to us. With that data, we're going to go ahead and make a best fit line. So I'm going to make a best fit line. It's going to go something like that. From that, we need to pick 2 points, and we are going to do our rise over our run, or our change in at y divided by our change in x. Okay, so let's pick 2 points that are easy to work with. So let's go with this one right here. Okay, we're going to call that 10 and 35 to this one at 30 and 25. So starting here, okay, my rise, we're going to go down, because this is a negative association, from 35 to 25. Okay, so my rise would be negative 10. And then my run, we're going to go from 10 to 30. So my run would be a change in positive 20. Well, negative 10 divided by 20 would be negative 1/2. So if we look at my answers up here, okay, luckily this time I got an answer that's exactly matching negative 1/2 percentage point. So that should be the correct answer. Now you're not always going to get an answer that exactly matches what you get. You're just going to have to pick the one that is closest to what you get. So as long as you make the proper trend line and pick 2 good points to work with, you should get an answer that's close enough. So let's do this one. Okay, so I'm going to make my trend line. We're going to go something like that. Okay, again, I'm going to pick 2 points so that we can find the rise over the run. Okay, I'm going to go with this point right here and this point right here. Okay, so my rise, we're going to start here at 22 and we're going to go down to right here at 14. Okay, 22 to 14. Well, that difference, 22 minus 14, well, not actually, we're going 14 minus 22, because if we look at the line, it's a negative line. So we're going to go from 22 to 14, which is a change of negative 8. So we're going to decrease. My rise will be negative 8. And then my run, we're going to go from 15 or 16 and a half to 22. Well, 22 minus 16.5 would be 5.5. So negative 8 divided by 5.5, by the way, I do have a calculator, so if you do not have a calculator, you can use the one that's on your phone or you can find one online, is going to be negative 1.45 repeating. Okay, negative 1.45 repeating. So, if we change that to a fraction, it's going to be negative 16 divided by 11. Again, not a great answer to get, but if we look here, okay, at my answer choices, we can see, okay, A, negative 1/4. Well, if we change that to a decimal, that's going to be negative 0.25. That's not very close to negative 1.45. So I don't think A is going to be a correct answer choice. B, negative 1/2 would be negative 0.5. Again, not close into what we got. Not a correct answer choice. Negative 3/2 would be negative 1.5 if we convert it to a decimal. Well, negative 1.5 is pretty close to negative 1.45, right? So that most likely is going to be our correct answer choice. But just to double check, we're going to do negative 7 divided by 2. Well, 7 divided by 2 is going to be negative 3.5. Well, obviously that answer is nowhere near close to what we got. So we double check. Great. Got the answer correct. So we'll do one more for good measure. Okay. So again, I have some points. We're going to create our trend line. This one should be a little bit easier to get. There we go. Pick 2 points again so that we can do our rise over our run. So I'm going to go with this point up here at 1 and 9. And we're going to follow it to this point right here at 8 and 4. Okay. So my rise, so we're going to, again, since we're going down, it's going to be a negative association. So we start at 9 and we're going to go to 4. So 9 to 4. So that's a change of negative 5. So my rise would be negative 5. And then we're going to go from 1 to 8. And that's a change of positive 7. So we have negative 5 divided by 7, which, guess what, is going to be the same thing in fraction form. But if you want to put it in decimal form, it would be negative negative 0.714. Okay, so let's look at our answer choices. So negative 5 hours, well, that's not close to what we got because we have under 1. Negative 3, again, that's not close to what we got because, again, we have under 1 hour. Negative 3/4 and negative 1/3. Okay, so A and B aren't correct answer choices. So let's change C and D. So negative 3/4 would be negative 0.75. Well, that's pretty close to what we got. And the other one would be negative 0.3 repeating. So the best answer choice for us to pick would be C. So hopefully we're getting that. All you guys do is it's going to be your rise over your run. You're going to pick 2 points on the graph and then do your rise over run. Your change in y divided by your change in x. And again, you might not get the exact correct answer, but hopefully we can get something that is close enough to the answers that they give us. Okay, let's move on to the third exercise we're doing this week. All right, this is what we're doing here is now they're going to give us the line. We have to find the equation and then estimate an answer from the graph. So remember, when we use an equation here, it's always going to be y equals mx plus b. Remember, m stands for slope. Change in y divided by your change in x. And b stands for your y-intercept, where the line crosses the y-axis. So, looking at this line that we're given right here, okay, we're going to cross the y-axis right here at 20. So my y-intercept, my value for b, should be 20. So my value for b should be 20. Then we're going to pick 2 points and work with those points. So again, I'm going to pick this point right here and this point right here. So we're going to start at 1 and 40, and we're going to go from 40 up to 60. Well, that's an increase of positive 20. And then my run, we go from 1 to 2. So that's an increase of just 1. So then my rise would be 20. My run would be 1. 20 divided by 1 is just 20. So my equation should look something like this. Y equals, instead of m, we're going to put 20 because that's what we got for our slope, 20x. And then my y-intercept was also 20. So my equation should look something like this. Y equals 20x plus 20. So let's go down, see if that's one of our answer choices. And look, there it is. Okay. Then, based on this equation, we need to estimate the score for a student that spent 3.8 hours studying. Okay. Well, 3.8 is going to be somewhere right about here. Okay. So, unfortunately with this, it's not an easy one for us to just predict. But what we can do is we can use the equation we have, y equals 20x plus 20. Okay. So we have y equals 20x plus 20. Now, we know that we need to find what the score is for a student that spent 3.8 hours studying. Well, we know study time is my x value. So in this case, we know x is equal to 3.8. So all I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to take 3.8 and replace it for x in my equation. Okay, and then that's how I solve for y, which will be my score. So y is equal to 20 times 3.8 plus 20. Now this time, we're going to do it on a calculator. 20 times 3.8 plus 20, and we're going to end up getting 96. So that should be our answer for down here, 96. Check it. Great, you got the correct answer. Let's move on. Now I'm going to do one more for y'all. Now in this case, let's look at the graph. First things first, we need to see if it's going to be positive or negative. That should help us eliminate some of our answer choices. So from left to right, it's increasing, it's going up. So that's going to be a positive slope. So if we look at my answer choices down here, okay, we notice the numbers that are in front of x, in this case, they are all positive. We have positive 2/5, positive 40, positive 800. So all of our answer choices have a slope of positive slope. So therefore, all the answer choices, we can't eliminate anything. Okay, well, let's go ahead and find the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. In this case, it crosses the y-axis at 800. So my value for b should be 800. So this number right here that's being added to it will be my y-intercept. Well, there's only two answers that we can leave there, because C and D both have a y-intercept of 2/5 and 40. So those can't be correct answers. So now we're just left with two answers. Okay, well, let's find our slope really fast. All right, so we're going to pick 2 points. So let's go with the first one at 0 and 800. And then let's go with the second one up here. Okay, so we go from 800 to 1200. Well, that's an increase of 400. So my rise is going to be positive 400. And in my run, we go from 0 to 10. Well, that's an increase of 10. 400 divided by 10 is going to be 40. So my slope should be 40, making the correct answer B. Now, we need to estimate what the average rent is in 2020. Okay, well, if we look, this says years after 2000. Okay. On this graph, we don't see 20 years, right, to be able to correct answer. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do what we just did. We're going to take our equation, which we know is y equals 40x plus 800. Okay. We know the year we're looking for is 2020. Well, that's going to be 20 years after 2000, because this is years after 2000. Well, that's going to be our x value. Our x value is not going to be 2020. It's going to be 20, because it's 20 years after 2000. we're going to replace that for x in our equation. So then we're going to solve for y. So it should be y equals 40 times 20 plus 800. Well, 40 times 20 is 800 plus 800 should be 1600. So my answer should be 1600. So if we plug that in here, check it, boom, we're going to get the correct answer. Now, for the last one that we're doing, it's going to be interpreting your slope and y-intercept for linear relationships. So what you're doing here is it's going to give you a graph, okay? And it's going to ask you what some part of that graph represents. So in this case, we have a graph that shows the relationship between hours spent on video games and hours spent on homework last week for students in Joyce's class. Joyce created the following scatter plot and regression line to show this relationship. The line has a y-intercept of 23. What is the best interpretation of this y-intercept? Well, if we look at the graph, okay, on the x-axis, we have hours spent on video games. And on the y-axis, we have hours spent on homework. So, we can say that the y-intercept, which is going to be right here at 23, 0 and 23, that means that on average, if a student did not spend any hours on video games, they spent 23 hours on homework. Because that is, the points are 0 and 23 for that y-intercept. Well, these values right here, the x values, are all for video games. And then the y value is all for homework. So that means that 0 hours on video games, they spent 23 hours on homework. So let's look at the answer choices. The model indicates that students who spent 0 hours on video games will average 23 hours spent on homework. Well, that's what I just said, right? So let's read through the rest, just double check. Joyce spent approximately 23 hours on homework. Well, we don't know that. This is for all of the students in Joyce's class. She spent approximately 23 hours on video games. Again, this is for all the students, not just Joyce. The model indicates that students who spent 23 hours on video games will average approximately 0 hours spent on homework. Okay, well that's flipped from what we just said. Okay, so the only answer choice would be A. Great, let's go move on to the next problem. Last one I'm doing for y'all and then we'll be done. On average, each dollar, let's read the question, what's asking for first. So, we have a scatter plot and regression line below to show the average income in dollars in several major American cities plotted against the rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in those cities. The fitted line has a slope of 0.031. Okay, so we're trying to see what does the slope represent. Okay, remember, slope is your change in y divided by your change in x. So if we look at the y, we have our rent. Okay. So all your y values are going to be rent in dollars per month. All your x values are going to be your average income. Okay. So what this is saying, if we have a slope of 0.031, alright, that is saying that the money you spend on rent, that you spend $0.031 on rent for every dollar you make in income. Okay? And that your rent will increase by $0.031 per month as your average income increases by $1. Okay? So that's saying that's 3.1 cents increasing. Alright? So on average, each $1 increases in average income was associated with a 0.031 increase in average rent. That could be a correct answer. On average, each 0.031 cent increase in average income was associated with a 1 point increase in average rent. Again, this is rent over income, so it's going to be 0.031 divided by 1. So it's rent divided by income. We would predict a city whose average income was 0 to have an average rent of 0.031. No. Okay, because the average income, okay, that's trying to say that the y-intercept. That would say that the y-intercept would be at 0.031. Well, this has a y-intercept actually in the negative range. because it crosses down here and it'll keep going down this way. Okay, that's not correct. We predict a city whose average income was 0 to have an average rent of 0. Well, again, that's saying it starts at 0, 0. Well, my line doesn't start at 0, 0. The only correct answer would be that every time $1 increases in average income, it would increase by 0.031 in your average rent. Okay, so that's all we have for this week, guys. Again, I'll be going over this a little bit more on Tuesday. And I'll be able to answer any questions y'all might have then. I also have office hours on Monday from 2 to 3 and on Wednesday from 10 to 11. Hope to see y'all then.